Welcome to Hairston Huddle podcast, where family, faith, football, and life collide. We are here to inspire growth, tackle life's challenges, and help build stronger connections within our families and communities. Join us twice a month as we dive into real conversation, explore current events, and share life lessons that can change your game on and off the field. This is your huddle, your space to grow. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the first of many episodes for the Hairston Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Justice Hairston, alongside with my cousin, Aaron Hairston. And we just wanted to talk to you guys briefly about what we're about. I'm a father first, husband, former athlete, and entrepreneur. I think that our podcast is unique because we bring a unique blend and a perspective that, people are hearing it, but we feel like if people close to us, we could really affect a positive message, giving the people a chance to hear some of the things that happened in my life, along with Aaron. And Aaron, if you don't mind going right into who you are.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Aaron Hairston, and I'm super excited about this podcast. I'm a father as well of two growing young men, 15 and 10. Been married almost 27 years, which is insane. Just to think about that, I spent more time with my wife than I did with my parents. And yeah, man, being an entrepreneur as well, being a geek at heart, in technology, that's kind of my bread and butter. But I have my hands in so many things, and my passion is really sharing my life's experiences with people all over the world, and whatever breadcrumbs I can leave for people is my goal. I always want to make that dash between the day I was born and the day I get called to heaven very, very fruitful for other people, because I believe that, it's not about what we do, it's about what we leave behind, for people to grow on. And so I'm super excited about this podcast. We're going to get into a lot of different topics, which I'm excited about. I also played professional football, played at the arena level. Unfortunately, got cut short week 5 in the first season with an ACL, PCL, meniscus injury, which was devastating. But, just like anything else, right? We don't have control of our life, really. It's just how we pivot when things come about. And I think that was God's way of saying, you know what? This chapter is closing. We're going to bring you into new things. And I can say that after that happened, so many more things and blessings came along my way. And I'm so grateful for it. So yeah, man, I'm super excited about this. Well, Jay.
Yeah, man, awesome. It's just funny because when I came up with the name, as we started to brainstorm, I thought about things that tied us together, and obviously football is one of them. Family, and then obviously the last name is strong. So, and we had a sports background, and I like to tell people, the football world and sports world itself is a microcosm of life, right? It had so many different points of it. And specifically, like you said, you dealt with injury. I stopped playing because of an injury. And how do you handle those things? And how do you come back? And what's the next step? I think that people a lot of times attribute to who I am to football. And I feel like even though I did play football for a good part of my life, once that was over, I wanted to be I didn't say I needed a new identity, but I didn't want to be identified as that, as just a football player. And in a huddle to me is like, a circle. If everybody ever see a huddle, it's a circle. And you think about the circle in the family, holding hands, and we eat at the dinner table. When I'm talking to my sons, we're in a little huddle per se. So while it's football, we're talking about football and sports and a wide variance. I feel like the huddle is near and dear to me because it's meant so much to me in my personal life, and now as I transition and continue to transition to another part of my life, and I think is the best part of my life is being a father and a husband. I can tell some people some stories that may help them through. So that's who we are as a podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that we can help you guys, with our stories and our input, and we'll take yours as well too. And Aaron, speaking of the huddle,
Yeah.
We're right now we're getting into the playoff season, right? For NFL, college football for the first time is having a playoff. My hometown team, Ohio State, just put a whooping on. They just put a whooping on Tennessee. Eric Pierce, you owe me some money, by the way, on that bet. And now we're getting ready to face. I'm not sure we're getting ready to face, but I'm sure we're going to win it. To say that. And what do you think, man? Who's your favorite NFL team?
It's hard to say, man, right now, but it's the New York Giants. I've been a
Oh,
Giants fan since the '80s, man, and we've had some really great runs, but this isn't one of them. 10 straight
yeah,
losses. It's interesting. I really enjoy listening to interviews of players and coaches, and I'm not a real big fan, of Dable's interviews. I think that he's
mm,
got to get more creative. I think he has so much to give, but he doesn't know what to say, and I think that kind of hurts him, because let's say that he never gets to coach again. Who knows, right? The coaches, their careers change all the time, and Mara may say, "Hey, it's time to go." Who knows? But
yeah,
every time on his interviews, he talks about it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, yeah, we got that. But what is your fault? Like get more detailed with it, because we all know we're gonna go through tough times. And right now the Giants are going through an identity crisis. I don't think they really know who they are. And you see the effort on the field. Some guys go all in, some guys don't. They take plays off. Same thing with, their staff. I think that sometimes they're all excited and they have a plan, and then they don't execute. But it's interesting. Like when he says it's on me, it frustrates me, Jay, because I'm like, dude, like you can go so much more in depth. And I think that that's the quality of being at that level, is being able to, have the responsibility of such a great opportunity with these young, incredible athletes on a huge stage and so many eyes watching. And if you were a child and you were going through a losing program and you're frustrated, like you would want to hear, how can you handle that? How can you pivot from that and really get into more detail? So I don't know. Right now, it's a really tough pill to swallow, but I think that there's some great thing coming down. I love Neighbors. I am a DeVito fan. I think that Tommy has some really great qualities, but I'm starting to see that his decision making just isn't there yet. And the NFL is tough. There's so much going on so fast. You're studied like with a fine tooth comb. Like teams know what you're trying to do. So you got to be a great chess player, and you got to be someone who's really really tough skinned and can handle some things. But the Giants right now for me is an opportunity to learn and grow. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what they do. GM wise, I think he made a lot of mistakes in the offseason, and I don't know if he was ill advised or not. But the whole the whole Hard Knocks joint. I mean, it was great as a fan to be able to watch it, to see behind the scenes, and I can relate with a lot of things that were going on. But I tell you, man, probably would have done a few things differently. Probably wouldn't have gotten away from Saquon, man. Saquon was the
yeah.
heart and soul, man, and being a running
Yeah,
back.
and you can see his production in Philly. And what it sounds like to me is like, because I'm a Niners fan, and we having some struggles, but we've had a we haven't gotten the championships. Obviously, we won it, but it's been easier to watch. But this year, you know, it's hard, and it sounds like both franchises are dealing with adversity, and that's just gonna all when you're dealing with adversity, you're either gonna blow your chest up and try to figure out a way. And fortunately for the NFL programs and teams, organizations, they'll have an opportunity to right the ship a little bit come next year if they get some things in place. And the reason why I say that is because, inside of sports, you're a microcosm of family. So I look at it like they're in disarray. How do they right the ship? And the same thing when you deal with a family structure, if you're in a family dynamic, if your family's in disarray, how do you fix it? How do you right the ship? So communication, I think, is very important as it pertains to like the family dynamic, and even in the organizational piece. They got to somehow find a way to communicate that they can all get on the same page, because there's no way you let a talent like Saquon Barkley walk away and is potentially going to be the leading rusher in the National Football League. So
Right.
communication is key at every level of life, and it starts at a very young age. Me personally, I like I, I'm lucky enough to have seen, the Niners win a Super Bowl. You've seen the Giants win one in last 20 years. But more importantly for me, I'm a Niners fan, and my sons are Niners fans. So while we talk about family, that's something that brings us closer together. Obviously, we play sports, and it's an opportunity to teach a lot of life lessons in the game of sport and other factors. So I'm a
Yep.
big fan of football and sport. What it does is just, playoffs is coming, and it don't look like we're going to be a part of it. We had a tough loss the last couple of weeks, man, and it's just like tough to deal with. So
I was rooting for you guys. I think last year you guys really did well. Pull some things together. I love Purdy. I think that he really stepped up when he needed to, and I'm surprised. But the NFL is tough, man. It's so tough, week in and week out. And it's interesting too because when people say my team sucks, right? It's hard to really swallow that, man. These are incredible athletes, like the best of the best. Like you don't get drafted and suck. Like there's no such thing. Now there's coaching schemes and things that don't really align with the kids' skill set and things like that. And I think a lot of people don't understand that from a fan base. That the players don't suck. They do not suck. What's happening is just it's a congruency issue, right? There's an alignment problem that's not happening. And I think even in the family, when you're at home, when you're working with your kids, working with your wife, there's some congruency that's needed, and you have to understand what people's strengths and weaknesses are, and you have to align yourself with their strengths, right? And you got to complement each other. And I think that teamwork and trust is such a big factor, in communication, like you talked about, is such a huge factor. When those things start to go astray, then you start to see the production go down, right? The success of
mhm.
whatever it is that they sought out start to go down. And it's interesting because you hear people say this guy stinks or this guy sucks. Like it's so far from the truth. Wouldn't you agree, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said. First of all, you're talking about the 1% of the 1% of the world ever played in the National Football League,
Right.
and to say an athlete is not good when you could look at the body. Where let's take a couple quarterbacks right now that were supposedly not good 5, 6 years ago, and now they're the top 10 quarterback in the league. You got Baker Mayfield, went to a bad situation in Cleveland, didn't work out, went to the Rams, got to kind of revitalize. Now he's in Tampa, reached another deal. You have Sam Darnold, who's a first round draft pick to the Jets, didn't go so well. We've been here. He was with us for a little while, the Niners, and now he's with the Minnesota Vikings, looking like he's the guy, maybe for not the long term, but for the distant short term. Let's say a 2 year more deal. They got a young quarterback that came from Michigan that they drafted the first round, but quarterback is the position in the National Football League that you could actually have a second life, which is rare in sports, right? Guys, you're actually asked to do more between the head than your athleticism. So I don't know, man. I just feel like saying somebody's not good at that level is is somebody not very knowledgeable about the sport itself.
Right.
And I'm hopeful for those guys that have an opportunity to do something they enjoy. They probably want to do it since they were really young, and now they have the opportunity. Just fortunately for the quarterback position specifically, you're kind of like a cat. They're gonna have about 9 lives if you just play good. You're gonna have 9 lives. Other positions, not so much.
Yeah. I mean, look at, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, Tom Brady. I mean, he was a backup, right? His opportunity came and he shined. And I think that Belichick system, allowed any athlete to really to define themselves. And then he would put them in the right positions. And I know, obviously, when he went to Tampa, people were like, well, it really wasn't Belichick. But you can't take away from what the Patriots did. Like, you look at some of those pieces, it's not easy putting together, teams like that can be unbeatable at times, even though we beat them. Right, the Giants, we beat them.
Yeah.
We got them when it counted, and I think about that season so many times because we went through some serious adversity that season. We fought through, won the wild card, and then won it all the way through. So, it can happen, and I think it starts with belief, just with anything, right? I mean, if you believe you can achieve it, you're going to work hard for it, and you're not going to allow distractions to step in, and you're going to hold each other accountable, and you're going to know your role, and you're going to bring the best out of each other. And I think that's what starts to happen. And as you talk about quarterbacks, that's the position because they're the ones making the decisions when it counts the most. And sometimes those decisions are a matter of 2 seconds, a second and a half. Like if you make a bad decision, that can cost you, the whole season. So it's just interesting, as we talk about quarterbacks, because I think that position is probably the hardest, if not the hardest, in the NFL.
Well, yeah. Speaking of these teams and dealing with adversity, what is something that from a family dynamic that you might teach your family about dealing your boys? They're varying ages, but how do you handle adversity with them? How do you prepare them for something like that with life?
I can tell you that's a hard thing to do for me. And what I mean by hard is that I have my perspective, in the way that I handle it, but I'm 47. My children are 10 and 15, right? They, you know, they they're gonna handle it the way they feel their emotions allow, because they haven't become emotionally strong. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna deal with things. But one of the things that I do is I lean on the fact that you only learn through failure, right? You can only learn through adversity. You can only learn through resistance, right? So if you're not upset about it, then you don't care enough to make a change. So when it comes down to how much you care about whether or not you got what you wanted, is going to basically define how bad you are willing to make a change and make a difference, right? So being able to use that energy less in anger and fear and put it more into um, better decisions and growth and development. Just like an athlete, right? You know, if I know that I'm struggling on my first step or my jump cut, or making a quick reaction because the linebacker's in the hole, and being able to make a good decision, putting myself into an advantage, then that comes through practice, watching film and getting into it. But if I didn't care about it, then I wouldn't put in the extra time. And so I think for me, I try to do more listening and understanding what they care more about. When it looks like a failure, it may look like a failure to me, but to them, they're like, whatever. Like, I'm not going to harp on that. I'm going to steer them into things that they're very, very passionate about. So for my son, my oldest, he plays baseball. I think is one of the highest adversity sports in the world. And when he gets in the batter's box, he does have a short memory, which he's learned over time. Um,
Mhm.
and he handles things very, very, very mentally. So it's hard sometimes because he doesn't always talk about his feelings. He doesn't always talk about his reactions and things like that. But I can see it in his body language. And so I just tell him, I say, listen, you just got to keep working on it. Got to keep working on the little things. Making quicker decisions and staying with your strength, right? I think with baseball alone, it's really about picking your pitches and knowing your personality in the box. It's not about just swinging at whatever good pitches. I know, Ted Williams talked about, find a good find a good pitch to hit. That good pitch to hit is your pitch, right? So if you don't like outside pitches, then leave them alone, right? Leave them alone. Don't even try to chase those. A pitcher's not always going to hit every single spot that you don't like, right? Eventually he's going to miss. And so you got to find that personality. So I think the same thing goes in my home. I try to listen for my wife, my kids, myself, and all of our different personalities, and trying to just complement where that is. Because, as a father at times, especially a very competitive person, in the beginning, I thought, I needed to say something, I needed to fight, I need to, make them do something. But what I found over times is that, these individuals in my home, they're all personal, individual people. And so it's up to me to listen and understand how I can just give perspective and let them make the choice.
Yeah, I just for me, I just find it's very hard because as a father, and once a boy, um, and I remember the times and things that I now know I needed that I didn't know I needed at that time. And our sons are going into a world that needs our guidance and protection, and sometimes they need protection from things that they not even know those coming. And so I guess like in football, they say the games are not won on Sundays; the games are won in practice. And in family, games are won in preparation. And I believe that preparation starts at a very young age, specifically, young, right? I challenge my sons consistently, and when the moment arises where I think that we need to figure out how he navigates through adversity, it's a very teachable moment. Now, I'm in a different spot. I have an 18-year-old, I have a 13-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, and I have a 5-year-old. Those are all varying times that kids deal with different things. And I'm here tasked to ensure that this young boy that one day will be a man and will be responsible for a family has to know how to have his feelings in check and know when let the emotion. It's okay to have emotion, and it always is, but you have to understand how to work through those emotional parts. So I always think about that. It is the thing that keeps me up at night, knowing that the world is not so nice to young black men. And last night I just went to bed. I hear my sons talking, and I'm like, you know, this is awesome, right? About conversations, about things that we have, about how to act. how do we handle things? And then my sons called me in the room. He said, Dad, we got to pray. All right. So we go in there and we pray before they go to bed. And that was something that's fairly new to us in our family because we don't push religion per se. We want our sons and our kids to have a personal relationship with God. And that's important because I don't want to push any particular religion. I want them to find their way. And in that way, if they find it themselves with our direction, it's gonna be better for them, I believe, in the long run. But it's just hard, man. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Parenting is they think playing football against 300-pound men is hard. That's easy. That's
That is
easy.
easy.
They,
Yeah, no,
they a
you
kid
bring
to
up a
come
good
in.
point. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I used to get so upset, man, because I thought that just because I had been through so much in life and I had
Mhm.
all these, these nuggets and things that all I would have to do was just give it to my child, and
Mhm.
they were going to do it. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like,
And not only that, there's another element to this that, and that is so the kid is so much a part of us, but he's so much a part of a mother, the
right.
woman that created that child, who comes with her own emotion and her own lived experiences and things like that. And a kid makes a face and you say, "You look just like your mother," you know. And that's a beautiful thing, and it's
It is.
just
It
like
is.
specifically, and like for example, in my home, sometimes I need to be the quarterback, the starting quarterback, right? And I'm going to call the plays and I'm going to do this and that, right? But then there's some days mom has to be the quarterback,
Yeah.
right? She has to call the plays, and I have to be the we would call the recipient of it, whether I'm getting the handoff to handle a task, or she gonna start it here and throw it deep, and I'm gonna catch it and finish the rest. It's just like that's how family dynamic is, man. Sometimes my wife needs to be the quarterback, and I'm okay with that. I feel like I picked a great mate because of that. Like she can handle a lot, and she's been asked to handle a lot of times, and I think she's done an excellent job.
Yeah. No, that's huge. I mean, for me, the same. I've been with my wife since we were 18, and so she's seen it all, right? She's seen the highs and the lows. She wasn't a really big fan of football because it 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 definitely took a lot of time from us. Um, but she saw how passionate I was and how much I wanted it. And so she was there. But she told me straight up, she goes, "I'm no one's cheerleader." And I was and I was kind of upset about that because I was like, dang, I do my best when I have someone in my corner cheering, but she was cheering differently. Like she thought outside of just the excitement of the game and me being the guy. Like she was like, nah, that's not impressive to me. Like what's impressive to me is the other stuff. Right? Yeah, you do that now. That's cool. And so I think that complements our marriage as well. Is like I'm okay giving the ball to her, right? I know that it's in good hands. Matter of fact,
Right,
she makes me better, because she doesn't give me what I want. She gives me what I need, right? So I think that at the end of the day, that compliment is so huge. And being a
mhm,
father, it's part of that, is you got to be a teammate, man. You gotta lower your ego, you gotta listen and be open. Because, the days that I was closed and I wasn't listening, man, those were some big mistake days. And I look back at them, I'm like, dang it. But you know what? I learned not to do that again. And all it was that I didn't do is I didn't listen. Right? I thought my idea was better. And that goes back to my faith as well. It's like, I know I don't control all my things in my life. I control my decisions. I control my effort and my attitude. Those are the only two things I control. Everything else is in God's hands. And so in our family, we put God first, then
mhm.
ourselves, then it's me and my wife, and then it's the children, right? And I think that bullseye in that order, um, if broken, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
I think at times too, we sway too much away from God, or we sway too much away from ourselves, and we think that we're going to be able to just fly solo, and it doesn't work that way, right? I think that we have to step in and play the role when it's our time to play the role, but you need to take care of yourself, and you need to make sure that your connection with God is strong, because that's where you're going to get your direction. In my opinion, and I think from there the kids are going to see it. They're going to see how strong and how consistent you are. With the things that you do. It's more about monkey see, not monkey say, right? So
right.
as you roll through your life, um, for me, I think that making sure that that's very clear. and you talk about prayer, you talk about faith. Um, I've had a journey with it. I didn't grow up, in a very strong religious family. I did go to church on the holidays, and my grandparents actually they were very strong Christians. And it was interesting how my parents handled it because it seemed like something changed when they came around, and it wasn't always for the good. It was confusing, to be honest with you.
Mm.
And I found myself kind of in this tug of war, and I knew what the war was now. Being um, a mature Christian, but uh, as I grew older, I found myself getting in some trouble because I didn't have a strong faith. And so when I met my wife, she was a very devout Christian. Her family was very strong. And that led me to be curious. And I wanted to marry her in the Catholic Church. I wanted her to have the things that she kind of foresaw for her family. And so I went through the whole process of Catholicism, did all the sacraments, all that stuff, was baptized. And, I think that that was probably the best pivot in my life because at that point, I found a new direction and I fell in love with it. And I felt so connected. And just like practice, right? I practice it every single day. And then when we had children, we sent them to Catholic school, and I can see that they're different. The way they perceive things, the way that they understand things, the way they process things. And I love the fact that they put God first in everything they do. They pray, on their own. They when we pray at night, they have their own ideas of how they want to give thanks and ask for forgiveness and all that stuff. They go to confession. Like it's pretty amazing just seeing that because I didn't grow up like that. I had a lot of uncertainty because I didn't grow up like that. And so I think setting your target right and making sure that that process stays consistent is what I found in our home works very, very well.
Awesome, man. Uh, you know, everybody gonna have a different journey as it pertains to what spirituality track you're gonna take. Me personally, like I just I was very big into church as a youngster. I was going to morning service and afternoon service, and I can quote some scriptures with the best of them. But it's just a matter of finding out what works for you and all that stuff. But we talked about our families and what sports means to us and the impact it's had on our life. And now we're sitting here in 2025. What are some of the goals that you're setting for yourself and your family moving forward? And we'll talk about a little bit of things about how to stay consistent for our viewers. If you have any questions, we want to chime in. We want to be able to help you answer some of the questions you have. So we're going to tell you a little about some of the things we have planned for 2025.
So for me, Jay, man, at a young age of 47, I can tell you that a lot has changed. My perspective on things and what's important. At first, it was like chasing money and it was chasing success in other people's eyes. And when I realized that none of that really mattered, because at the end of the day, if I wasn't happy with the way that I lived that day, then I needed to make a change, right? So I started working on a few things that were very, very important. The first thing is investing money. So I pulled out everything in my 401k and I started managing my own money. I do trade online, I trade in Robinhood, and I do my due diligence each and every day. I study what is invested. I have some really good YouTubers that I listen to on a constant basis, just understanding the language. So now that when I watch CNBC Business or something, I understand what they're talking about. And then I align myself with things that I actually use, right? So for instance, I invest in Nike. The reason why, because I wear Nikes, right? I invest in what's another one? NVIDIA, right? I think NVIDIA is
Mhm.
huge. I think their evolution of technology, right? So one of the things that I started to work on is really understanding how to manage my money so my money makes money. So that was number one, is making sure that I'm putting my money in a place that it's working for me, that I can leave a legacy. Because my parents didn't leave me anything. And I love them dearly, but I think at that time they didn't really know about that, right? So I had to become educated in saying, well, how can I leave something behind for my children that will grow with or without them, and it will be there if they ever need it. So generational wealth, that type of thing, and knowledge, and I share that with my kids. The second thing is entrepreneurship. I think that it's so important to build your own. And I also believe that, if you don't find a way for money to make money while you sleep, then you're going to work the rest
Mhm.
of your life. And so I've created a few things that have grown legs and they've started to run on their own. And that was very important to me to show my children and say, listen, don't just get up and go to work for somebody. Like, yeah, you'll need to do
Right.
that for a little bit, but they're capital investors, right? Investors, right? So they're paying that you can live your dream, but know what that dream is, know what you want, right? What will you do, whether you were paid on it or not, right? That's the goal, is to find something that you can get up and do no matter what, and then find a way to
Mhm.
make money doing that. So that was number two, was like to be really consistent with my entrepreneurship ventures and things like that, and keeping it aligned, with my values and things that I believe in. Number three is keeping the communication strong, and it starts by listening. Each and every year, I go through two books: How to Win Friends and Influence People, and Men Are from Mars and Women from Venus. Those two books are my hands down books to guide you through things, being a man and also being a best friend, man. I think life is about being a good collaborator with others, man. And I think with the world that the way we live in and social media and stuff, like understanding how to win friends and influence people is so important. So definitely grab that book. And like I said, Men Are from Mars, Women from Venus. It's an old book. It's an old goodie, man. But I tell you what, that book is gold, man. Like when it comes from understanding women and understanding what language they speak, man, I can tell you, man, I've gotten a lot of high fives from my wife. She's like, "How did you?" And I'm like, "Been studying." She's like, "Okay," it makes a big difference, man, when they can feel heard. So that was number three, and then number four is just staying consistent with my schedule. I used to be an avid, lifter, workouter, all that stuff, but priorities changed and time changed. I'm at practice with the kids and running around, and find myself, less and less at the gym, but staying more consistent in the things I can do in the time I have. And so doing push-ups and, things that I just feel strong doing, following my kids. And then number five, which doesn't mean that it's my last thing. It just means that it's on my list. And all of my things on my list are one priority, really. I just find a time and place to do them consistently. It's just staying strong in faith and realizing that, wisdom comes with being able to let go and let God, and so I put the Lord in the middle of everything I do. And so just staying strong in my faith and, letting go more of the things that I know I can't control and staying disciplined with the things that I do. So those are the things I'm working on right now, Jay, and I'm super passionate, and I feel like I'm fueled for the goals that I want to achieve.
Awesome, man. And like I said, I appreciate um, you know, all that, right? Like, and it's important to hear like how people um set up their goals, because it allows you to maybe put yours into a little bit more perspective. It allows you to, maybe, hey, maybe I need to attack it this way. So, but for me personally, in 2025, there's some family goals that I want to attack. I want to continue to make sure my family is strong in the sense of how we grow together, and that's my relationship I grow with each individual child. My mother had 8 kids, and she did an exceptional job of having a personal relationship, I believe, with each one of our kids. She had a way of all making us feel special. My wife, she's in a tough spot, right? We live in a home with 4 boys, right? She's the only female. How do we allow her in 2025 to make her feel like she's one, have time to herself? Because it's a male driven home. I'm sure it's hard for her sometimes. Financially, just want to continue to work and build, like you talk about, generational wealth in ways that allow you to make money while you sleep for all my kids, so that when it's time for them to make a big purchase, they're now ahead of the curve, except for asking somebody else for money and not necessarily needing to do so. And not a bad thing to borrow, because borrowing is a good way to build some other way for financial wealth too. But that's another conversation. And on a personal level for myself, I want to challenge myself in 2025 to be a better communicator. I want to try to be more present and emotional things with everybody in my family. That's my kids, that's my wife, that's my siblings, that's my whomever. Because I've been closed off emotionally for a lot of years, and not so much so after a while that I had to be, but because I feel like it was something that I was told or I perceived as necessary to be the man I needed to be. And that was being quote unquote tough. So having those conversations, being more emotional where I need to be, challenging my sons to be um, emotional when appropriate. It's okay to be emotional, but we want to curtail that, make sure we understand when we want to be emotional. Some things are more appropriate than others. What else? Some things that my wife, I want to try to help her with certain things around the house more, not because I have to, because I want her to know that she's appreciated. She don't have to do all those things herself. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to do in 2025. Obviously, this podcast is near and dear to my heart. I want to put some things on the forefront that are important to me that I think that help community, specifically some events around Father's Day. I think it's imperative that young men that don't have fathers, like I didn't have my dad growing up. I knew who he was. He wasn't very present. You and I both know this, coaching kids. You can see the kids that are our parents, and God says, "To whom much is given, much is expected." Right. So I think that we were given a gift to communicate with others, and I know that because I saw you coach. You're a great coach, and your communication skills bar none. So I think those are some of the things I want to continue to help outside of my home, and I'm going to do that by mentoring and coaching young people. Yeah, so that's it for my 2025. To our listeners, once you hear this podcast, if you guys have some things that you think you want to chime in or some questions you have about your goal setting, we are here for you guys. We are here to, help and give you that direction. And I'm speaking specifically to young men, older men that maybe are having a challenge with something that I may can help with, or even women, a single mom that may have a son out there. We're here for that. I believe that our platform is want to be designed to be a help to people, right? As we help ourselves and talk through our issues and try to reach more people. So that's where I'm at with it, man. I'm really excited about this coming year. I think this coming year is going to be great for both of us, and we're going to prosper in a great way. And that's pretty much my 2025, man. Hopefully.
Yeah, no, it's a great reminder, that we must have a target. just getting up and flying around and just playing playing the reactor, like it doesn't work that way. I've learned throughout my life that it's more important to be a thermostat than a thermometer, right? Set the gauge and know how to adjust and pivot when you need to, and it starts by focus, and having some type of goals. And I know there's really no guarantee that those goals are gonna go ahead and reach their pinnacle, but we do know what we focus on, we find, and what we focus on, we ultimately become, right? So, having a target is very important. I'm not a really big resolution guy. I was at one point, and then I realized it's like halfway through the season, it's like, man, the things that I wanted to do because it seemed like a good idea and everybody was excited about them isn't really important to me anymore, right? So it's like, well, what am I willing to do consistently? That's what matters. Right. And someone's opinion of me is none of my business. And so whether or not they, believe in what I believe and things like that, again, that's none of my business. And it should be important, to our listeners to understand that, because, your life is your life and you ultimately are responsible for it. At the end of the day, your effort and attitude is all you really control. Right. So how do you handle situations? How do you handle
It's great. I'm glad you said about that effort part, but go ahead. I want to chime in on that.
Yeah. No, I think the
Yeah.
attitude effort is huge, because when you control those things ultimately, then you know what you're responsible for, right? So when you have things on your plate that either you're not familiar with or have had hard times with them before, what do you do? Right? What do you do? You got some data, you got some things in history that you can pull back up and say, how did I do it? What did I do? And how did I like the outcome? Like, these types of things are your responsibility. And if you're not a good, a good on remembering what it is that you did, maybe you should start taking notes. I know a lot of people do journaling. I talk a lot, right? I do my videos every single day. So I always talk about what I'm doing. And that's my way of journaling. So I can go back and listen to my videos and go, oh, yeah, that's what I focused on that day. Or what was my energy this morning when I did that video? And, and am I still on track with what it is that I focused on? Like, how did I handle when things try to knock me off course? Like, all those types of things are lessons and things that you can put in your bag to be able to have for later. That jump cut, back hop over somebody, I bet you Saquon dreamed about that before he did that. But because he was so instinctually driven in those moments. And we know as running backs, that's how it is. Really, we don't think when we're running, we just run, and we just know we got goals, and we just use and we lean on our instincts. The same thing goes in life, but instincts are built from knowledge of history, right? So when you start to think about what your effort is, what your attitude is in certain moments, even when you feel like you're not your best, there's a lot to be learned there. Write it down, remember it. Next time it shows up, give it a different try, give it some adjustment. And like my dad said, adjust and readjust and adjust again. That's life, son. When you understand that, adjust, readjust, and adjust again, then you know what? I've done my job and left back what I gained over life. So those are the things that I think for real, when we get into the new year, effort and attitude, just dial in. And what were you going to say, Jay, about that?
I like the effort part. Like, I feel like for men specifically, well, me, I'm gonna speak for me because I can only speak for me. But whenever something goes wrong, the question I ask myself, what was my effort look like in that thing, right? And if I could look at myself, like, yeah, I should have had better effort, and whatever it is, now I can hold myself accountable. And obviously there's other ways to handle those things, but I want to make sure that I'm accountable by being present. Time is our greatest gift, and I don't want to waste a moment looking back saying I wish I could have did more. I did that with football, and that's over. And it was great while it lasted, but this is far, far more important as it pertains to the family dynamic and the legacy I'm going to leave, with my sons. I just feel, man, I am extremely lucky and blessed to have had this opportunity to, be a dad to sons, which is what I always wanted. I always said, when my kids do this, I'm going to be coaching. I'm going to be doing this and that. And now I'm hearing it. And my son asked me probably about 5 years ago, Dad, why do you coach me in everything? But now he's realizing, like, as much as for him as for me too. I wanted to be a dad. And I think, like you said, money's not everything. Don't get me wrong, it helps out a lot. But when it's all said and done, yeah. When it's all said and done, man, it's important that we understand that, time is the greatest gift that we have, and how you spend that time is super, super important. So, guys, this is our first episode. I'm not sure how much time we got left, but we will put a link to our email address, which is going to be hairstonhuddle@gmail.com. We'll take any emails or questions. We love to have special guests on. At times, we will have other guests to accompany us to highlight some of the topics we're going to be talking about. And if you have a topic that you're interested in, please do not hesitate to, reach out to us. We would love to cover something that's important to you, because as our listeners, what's important to you is important to us. Aaron, you got anything else?
I'm excited, man. I think that enthusiasm is contagious. And I think a lot of people in this world right now can use a little bit of spark, and so why not leave behind some breadcrumbs? Super excited. You brought this idea up, man, and let's go. Let's run with it. Let's continue to leave value in the hands of others and continue our effort and attitude, because at the end of the day, it's all we control, man. So let's get after it, and let's have an incredible year.